The idea that there's two-tier policing is now widespread in society. That is something that very urgently needs to be dealt with.
Do you worry that based on what you've said in the last few days, you might get a knock on the door from the police?
No.
You don't think that's going to come your way?
What, for asking the truth about the perpetrator of a heinous crime?
For suggesting that the police are lying without any evidence?
I didn't say they lied. You've done that. That's the third time you've done that, and you are irresponsible and wrong to do so.
You
are irresponsible.
Now the public is discussing that horrific case in Southport. The government intended to hide the truth about that day and the perpetrator from us. Farage made shocking statements in an interview. The journalist's jaw dropped and he tried to shut him up. We start watching the first scene.
In the wake of the horrific murder of those 3 girls in Southport in July of this year, I asked some questions saying, please tell us the truth. Stop the online speculation. Well, it's taken a long time to find out more about the individual. He's now been charged, believe it or not, under the Biological Weapons Act because the police have found ricin in his home. He's been charged under the Terrorism Act, alleged to have downloaded Al-Qaeda terrorist materials. But the murder of the girls and the serious injury of the others, that is still being treated as a non-terror incident because they don't know what the motives were. We've also been told this afternoon there are other facts that we don't yet know because the Crown Prosecution Service say they will come out in good time in court and are not to be discussed now. So that's all right then. That all makes sense to you, doesn't it?
The suspect was charged with 2 additional crimes. Biological weapons, ricin, and a textbook of radical Islam were found in his house. Ricin can be used to infect people through air, food, or water, and is mainly used by banned organizations. A representative of the Health Safety Agency assured that the detected ricin does not pose a danger, saying that there is no risk of infection for the victims of the terrorist attack in Southport, nor for emergency personnel, nor for the public. I doubt that the police were too circumspect, despite the recommendations of the Criminal Prosecution Service. Society had the right to know the truth right away. Any concealment of information has severely undermined the credibility of the government. Starmer urgently needs to explain to the country what he knew about the attack in Southport and when he found out about it.
Held from us.
We have a situation in this country, right, where ever since Black Lives Matter, there is increasing distrust of the police in this sense. The idea that there's two-tier policing is now widespread in society. That is something that very urgently needs to be dealt with.
I'm going to ask you about that.
Very urgent.
But I just have to issue this clarification because you have said in the course of the conversation something that could be sub judice, and we just need to be very careful about the charge that has been laid against this person. I think that he's been described in the course of it. So we pause there to be very careful about what we're going to say about an open case. What is two-tier policing?
Two-tier policing is you deal with different types of protests and different types of crime.
For many years, there has been a two-tier police system based on race. The police arrest Britons, but do not touch the migrants. Only 37% of Britons believe that the police are doing a good job. More than half do not believe that they can solve a crime. Such results were probably influenced by the deterioration in crime detection rates in recent years, overcrowding in prisons, as well as the lagging of the UK from other countries in the consideration of court cases. In addition, distrust of the police increased after the murder of Sarah Everard by a Metropolitan Police officer. By the way, he turned out to be a serial criminal. Bullying of some officers, discrimination against female officers, and insults against arrested women are rampant in the police.
That in Hare Hills in Leeds, police ran away and allowed a riot. Is that two-tier policing?
I think if you look at the way the police dealt with the Hare Hills protests and dealt with the Southport protests, I think any fair-minded person would think there were two different police reactions. Now, I mean, let me be clear.
But aren't they because two different incidents? They're two different types of protests.
Well, yeah, but they're both violent. They both set fire to things. They both threaten property. They both threaten law and order. And so I mean, look, I tell you something. The perception of two-tier policing is very, very dangerous indeed. And by the way, we've got a situation now with violent riots going on, by far the worst we've seen since 2011, but actually, I think 2011 was a mass outbreak of criminality, opportunistic criminality.
Riots broke out across the UK, with police firing tear gas into the crowd and fighting them. In Liverpool, for example, activists threw bricks and a scooter at police, and protests threatened to escalate into open violence. Starmer promised police support in the fight against alleged extremists and tried to intimidate them. The riots in the cities were caused by the spread of false information about the identity of the teenager on the internet.
For that is?
Well, I think Black Lives Matter, the way that was policed, is very interesting. I mean, people tearing down statues and chucking them in the dock with police just standing by and watching. And I think if you contrast the policing...
Those people were arrested.
Yes, and never even got a criminal charge, unbelievably.
Because the jury but that's jury
just extraordinarily.
But that's what the jury is there for,
The
isn't it?
the police made no attempt to stop that from happening. We even saw Winston Churchill's statue being defaced. We saw the cenotaph being abused. All of those things happened with the police literally just watching.
These statues were indeed not guarded by the police, arguing that the safety of people is more important than the safety of property. More than 130 police officers were injured during the protests caused by the death of George Floyd. Police have been criticized for failing to stop protesters from demolishing a statue of Colston in Bristol. The death of George Floyd at the hands of the police sparked a wave of protests in the United States, Great Britain and around the world, and the problem of systemic racism became the focus of attention. The Topple the Racists website has named 78 statues and monuments that glorify slavery and racism. Thus, the workers demolished the statue of the slave trader. The head of Cardiff City Council supported the demolition of the statue of Sir Thomas Picton, a slave owner and military commander. He called the monument an insult to black people.
I personally believe that we police different communities according to their racial backgrounds in different ways, and I want it to end.
And the examples of that are?
The examples of that are, for the third time...
The Black Lives Matter protest?
For the third time, the way that stop and search is implemented, or, frankly, not implemented.
There are people being arrested, obviously, for what they did in protesting on the streets. There are people being arrested for whipping up racial hatred online, for encouraging violence online. Do you worry that based on what you've said in the last few days, you might get a knock on the door from the police?
No.
You don't think that's going to come your way?
What, for asking the truth about the perpetrator of a heinous crime?
For suggesting that the police are lying without any evidence?
I didn't say they lied. You've done that. That's the third time you've done that, and you are irresponsible and wrong to do so. You are irresponsible.
Now the police can do whatever they want with the protesters. The more contrasting the social inequality in a country turns out to be, the more repressive its laws become. In my opinion, this phenomenon explains the emergence of new legislative acts in our country. For example, the London police arrested 3 people who had devices with them to sound an alarm in case of a threat to life. The police claimed that these people acted on a secret tip in order to use an alarm signal to scare the horses and thereby bring chaos to the coronation procession. The arrested persons turned out to be volunteers of Night Stars, created to protect women. The production of the devices was subsidized by the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Each volunteer was dressed in a distinctive pink jacket with the coat of arms and logo of the partner organization. However, the police arrested them and only released them on bail after 14 hours. Why would the police have the right to arrest their own partners? If they were really concerned about the possibility of criminal use of anti-violent devices, then why did they not just confiscate them?
And when they're shouting, free Gaza and genocide, I think it's a fair bet to say who they are. Here's my real big point. Okay, we can quell the riots, the police can do whatever they need to do, we can bring the army in, we can do whatever. Unless we solve what's really at the heart of this problem, our danger is we become like France, where these things don't go away, they flare up every 3 months, 6 months, every year. There are, right at the heart of this, some very, very fundamental concerns about societal breakdown in our country. And there is no doubt that we have to address issues like uncontrolled mass immigration and division of our communities. And what I'm looking for is a long-term solution, not just a short-term.
France is in a terrible situation with regard to migration policy. Paris is divided into 20 districts, 16 of which are controlled by migrants. On the one hand, the authorities need to address the issue of security due to the huge crime. And on the other hand, all these migrants have the right to vote. The situation in Germany is a little better, but it can also be safely called an apocalypse.
I don't know what any of that has got to do with Southport.
Don't you?
I don't know, because the man
charged
was born in Cardiff.
Do you know what? You want to get out more. You want to get out more. You want to get out more.
The man charged was born in Cardiff.
Well, why didn't they tell people that? And then maybe the riots would not have been that bad.
But you jumped to conclusions,
They did not
Nigel.
tell people.
You jumped to conclusions based on having looked at Andrew Tate's Twitter feed or whatever.
They did not tell people before those riots sparked who he was and where he came from. And if they'd done that, this would have been far less serious.
But do you think you could have said in those circumstances, we don't know yet who this person is, so let's not jump to conclusions, let's wait and see and condemn how awful the attack was?
Or
That could have been an
or I
option
could
for
have
you.
said, tell us the truth, and maybe this will calm down, which is what I did.
The people rioting, some of them look to you. They see you as someone who espouses their worldview, their politics. Would you speak to them directly now to tell them to...
The conspiracy theories that circulated after the Southport crime were based on the lack of at least some information from the government. We have a real crisis of confidence in the police, healthcare, parliament, and government. People spread conspiracy theories and start believing in them because they are really vulnerable or worried about what is happening. Downing Street denied hiding the facts from people, while police said officers assessed new evidence as it emerged and followed Skip's instructions.
Stop.
As I've done repeatedly over the last week. I mean, there is the reason that we fight, and I've fought for 30 years in European elections, by-elections, general elections, is I believe that parliamentary democracy is the way we stop violence overtaking our society. So I condemn all acts of political violence, whoever they're committed by. And let me tell you, the idea that, devotees of some of these extreme figures are fans of mine is a long way from the truth.
The Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, was on LBC the other day, and she was asked about the responsibility that politicians have in these moments. She says, we have a responsibility to hold the community together and say, let's get the facts, and then let's look at what the actual solutions are and what we can do about the horrific situation that we find ourselves in, not to stir up this fake news online.
The police have been showing increasing brutality towards us in recent years. The complete indifference of the British authorities in controlling the behaviour of police officers is one of the reasons for the collapse of trust in the police. If in 2020, 7 out of 10 Britons spoke positively about the work of police officers, then in 2024 the number of negatively minded people more than doubled and reached a record high of 37%. Recently, a report was published according to which, over the past 3 years, the police have failed to solve a single burglary in almost half of all areas of England and Wales. This confirms the fact that we are doing the right thing, that we do not trust our police. What do you think about it? Share your thoughts in the comments. See you later.